Now, let's get into a very important distinction in economics, the difference between a slide and a shift. In economics, we make a very big point about this. When we say the phrase, demand has changed, what we mean is that the entire demand schedule has moved. So in our previous video, what we saw was that a demand increase was when the entire column of quantities demanded at various prices increased relative to what they were before. What that's going to do is it's going to move the entire demand curve to the right if it's an increase, or to the left if it's a decrease. So if we had an increase in demand, what we would see is just a rightward shift of the entire demand curve. So a change in demand means the entire line has shifted. A decrease in demand would just move this curve over to the left. We would see something like this. Let's compare this to a change in the amount demanded. So a change in the amount demanded means a change in the quantity demanded because of a change in price with no change in the demand schedule. In this case, what we're doing is we're sliding along a given demand curve. So let's say we had some hypothetical price P1 and some hypothetical price Q1. If the price were to lower, we would predict, based on the first law of demand, that this person would want to purchase more. So in other words, as the price goes down, the quantity demanded will increase. The easiest way to tell if you should shift or slide is to figure out if the price changing has induced the change in behavior. If the reason people are buying more of something is because the price has decreased, then you have slid along a given demand schedule. If people are buying more and the price has not changed, then the demand curve itself has shifted for some reason. So what we would see if that were the case, if the demand in this case had increased, we would expect at P1 a greater amount to be purchased. We'll call this QA. And at P2, a greater amount would be purchased, which we'll call QB, than if the demand curve had stayed just the same. Now, we should point out that economists never presume that people actually think in terms of these words. We do, however, believe that people act in accordance with these principles. In other words, all that economics seeks to do, and all that it has ever sought to do, is to understand the actions of people. We do not dare to presume to know the actual thought processes of people. However, we do dare to presume that we have a coherent framework for understanding the actions of people. Now, finally, what we should point out is that it's actually what we call the relative prices that matter. We'll spend some more time on this in a later chapter, but for now, let's just think of it like this. If a gallon of gas was $29, $1 for a quart of milk would seem pretty, well, low. If gas were only 25 cents per gallon, though, $1 for a quart of milk would seem quite high. Again, we're going to come back and work on this a little bit later, but for now I want to get you thinking about these things called relative prices.